In today's episode, we are looking at what the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, can do to support small businesses. Anton, the President emphasized that he will be supporting small businesses. So in a previous talk, you said that that's what the government has been singing all these years. So I just want to find out from your opinion as an expert in this field, what should the President do in terms of practicality to make sure that this happens?
Okay, good question. I think there's a number of things he can do. Not all of them are going to make him popular both within his own party and within certain statutory bodies. For example, one of the things that I've always spoken about is that a small business should have a tax holiday for a period of anything from 3 to 5 years before they're actually required to pay tax on profit.
You mean when they're starting out?
Correct.
Okay.
You know, we've got such a high failure rate of businesses, not just in this country, it's a worldwide thing. But certainly in South Africa, the stats are something like 4 out of 5 businesses don't survive their first 3 years. Now imagine you gave kid gloves to those businesses. How many of them would actually be able to survive and create jobs? And those are the jobs that we need. You know, for every small business that's employing 2, 3, 4, 5 people, it's 5 people less in the unemployment queue.
Yes.
So it's a smart investment from a countrywide or national perspective to actually invest in these businesses. And I think that I was pleased to hear in the SONA speech that President Ramaphosa specifically mentioned creating an enabling environment for the SME sector, for the small business sector. Unfortunately, like you said, it's something we've been hearing for many years.
Yes.
And I would suggest starting with a tax break for small businesses, but he's going to have to get past SARS because they're not going to be happy. They're going to say, hey, you know, we've got revenue targets.
Yeah.
And now you're saying that SMEs or businesses under a certain size don't need to pay tax. But if we're serious about growing the sector, those are the kind of brave choices that are going to be required.
What else can he do?
I think that access to things like free staff development and training, anything, you know, government's role is not to hold the hand of the SME sector or the small business sector as it grows. Okay. Government's role is to create an environment that allows for growth. For example, it is still one of the most complex and expensive countries in the world, South Africa, to start a business. So take away the regulatory requirements, make it easy, make it simple, you know. I think you can add complexity later as the business grows, but certainly, for example, a business under 5 people, for argument's sake, shouldn't have to have memorandums of incorporation and all those complex things that a giant PTY has to have. Yeah. Make it streamlined and simple. Another thing is around HR and labor laws. I mean, the reality is that we have got the most onerous labor laws in the world. And I think it's a bit of a hangover from our past where there was so much exploitation. Yeah. During the time of apartheid, you know, people were really exploited. And I think we've overcompensated now to a point where, you know, someone cannot come to work for 3 days and then just stroll in like nothing's happened, and I as a business owner can't fire them. Yeah. Or I can catch someone red-handed stealing, but I've got to go through a whole lengthy CCMA process to try and dismiss them. I think that we need to streamline and make that process a lot more flexible and more favoring the employer at the small business level than the employee. At the moment, it's the other way around. Really? Why do I say that? Not because I want people to be exploited, but because
I was going to ask, how do you, it sounds like you're contradicting yourself. How do you make sure that the exploitation doesn't happen, as you've referenced that it happened in the past?
Well, first,
one is favoring the employer.
I think we've moved a long way as a nation,
yes,
where we don't tolerate that kind of thing anymore.
Yes.
Where people are sort of aware and confident enough in their own rights to not be exploited.
Yes.
But you know, the other side of that coin says that if I want to employ somebody and pay them 100 Rand a day, and they're happy to work for 100 or 150 Rand a day as a labourer, and I own a small contracting business.
Yes.
I'm legally not allowed to go and pick 5 guys up in my bakkie, give them work at 150 Rand a day, and then drop them off and say, thanks guys, you know, when I've got a job again, I'll come get you again. I'm not allowed to do that.
Okay.
Do you think that that's in the best interest of those guys on the side of the road?
No.
That rather like, no, you know what, minimum wage, like don't work at all unless you get minimum wage. You tell that guy that he can't work for that money. He's not allowed to because it's not right, it's exploitation. And I think he will have a very different answer. So things like that, you can't unionize the small business sector the way you can apply unions to corporates to keep them honest. Entrepreneurs by very nature have to be responsive. So if I suddenly need 10 staff
Yes.
for a function that just popped up out of nowhere, and I need to take them on without contracts and stuff because I just need them for tonight, I should be able to do that. I shouldn't be allowed to exploit and not pay them or whatever, but certainly I should have the flexibility to say, I'm going to take them on. If I employ someone on a part-time basis, I should be able to employ them part-time and not actually have to treat them as if they were a permanent employee and pay them sick leave and all those things. Because that's an enabling environment. At the moment
for an entrepreneur.
Correct.
Because your industry works that way, where you need to have flexibility. Because
Absolutely.
you're not like a big corporate.
Well, I'll ask you this. Do we need economic growth and jobs? Or do we need regulation and compliance more? What's more pressing to our nation given its current state, given where we are as a developing nation at the moment?
Economic growth and employment.
Okay, so let's make it happen. Let's make it easy, not
Yeah.
difficult. And I think that there's a lot that government can do in the short term to make that a reality, but it's going to require some foresight, it's going to require some form of management and policing, and it's going to require a lot of bravery, because it's not going to be popular to say, you know what, we're actually scrapping minimum wage for the following sectors because it's not viable, because A, employers can't afford it to pay that, and B, employees would rather actually have some money coming in than not get any money because people can't afford to employ them or don't want to, or are too afraid that once they've employed them they can't let them go for if business takes a dip or whatever. So I think that there's a lot that can be done in the short term in quite an easy way, but it's going to require some foresight, and I hope that President Ramaphosa actually is the guy that can make that happen.
I was going to ask you a question and put you on the spot. We know that he's a former, or he's still current entrepreneur. He's a businessman. So do you think he has the political will to do it, as we conclude?
I think he does. I think whether he's got a lot of factions to satisfy. So, if he, for example, said, small businesses can employ people without a contract for a maximum of 3 months, and then they need to have a contract, he would have the unions hopping up and down.
Yeah.
Because, again, it smacks of our past and potential exploitation. But, when we're sitting at a 55% or whatever the percentage is in unemployment, like the time for rhetoric and nice to haves is just so gone. We need to create jobs. Yeah. We need to make it easy for people to employ, and we need to make it happen fast. Yeah. And whatever that takes, I think, is going to be the right direction for our country at this stage of our development.